Thanks. On? All right, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. This is Real World Reports, Business Intelligence in Project Online and Project Server. My name is Mike McLean, and I'm joined today by my esteemed colleagues, Andrew and Alan. You'll hear more about us in a couple of minutes.
Hello, everyone.
So we've had a pretty exciting week here at MS Ignite. I know you've all been attending a lot of sessions, probably attended a party or dinner or two. And everybody just came in from another great MS Ignite lunch. Everybody's full. Well, this is your opportunity to just sit back and relax and enjoy the next 75 minutes. We have a great series of demos lined up for you, where you can go pretty deep into the BI space. And everything here is recorded, and I'll point out that we have also blogged most of these demos on Andrew and Alan's blogs. So don't worry about jotting down all the steps or instructions. You can go out there and pull them down anytime. So we know that there are a wide array of reporting tools available for you. So when you start thinking about pulling data out of Project Server and Project Online, you could look at Timelines, Visio, Excel Online, OData. Probably every one of these could warrant their very own session here at MS Ignite, maybe even multiple sessions. But today we've tried to pare it down to a couple of the most important tools that we think you would like to use at your disposal to extract data from project. So today we're going to focus on Excel, Excel Online, OData, which is how you pull data out into Excel, and Power BI. So like I said, we'll run through a great series of demos, talk about Excel a little bit, and we'll try to leave time for questions at the end so we can provide you some answers. And if we don't know the answers, we'll just make them up.
Perfect. Okay. Hey, and before we get too far into this, I just want to do just kind of a quick poll of the audience. How many of you are actually using Microsoft Project Server and or Microsoft Project Online? Show of hands. What would we figure, about 90% of the room? All right. And then of those who keep your hands up, can you take your hands down if you are using on-premises and not online? So I just want to see who's using Project Online right now. So 50-ish% of the room? Good. Okay. And how many Danish people do we have in the room? Couple? All right. Perfect. That's what we need to know. Thank you.
All right. So for those of you just joining us, we've actually done this presentation a few times now. We most recently did it at Project Conference 2014 last year. We did it at SharePoint Conference before that, Project Conference before that. So we included a couple of links to the previous sessions, so if you want to take a look at those, they're still largely applicable. And one of the great things about this presentation is we've tried to evolve it over the years based on two things. One, the new technologies that are released by Microsoft into Office 365 and across SQL. And the second is your audience feedback. So now I'm going to pass it off to Andrew, who's going to help us with that.
All right, so this is a very scientifically run presentation. And I know I've seen a number of you before. You've seen this presentation. So part of the science of this is as we go through all the various elements, we need your feedback. And the elements that get good feedback go into our continual improvement process. Alan's going to do the number crunching to figure it out. Next time around, we do this presentation. We keep the good stuff and we drop the bad stuff. And it's just a continually evolving process. Now, to support that process, we need a volunteer. One brave volunteer. Preferably with a name that the three of us can pronounce.
All right. Back there?
You, sir, in the back. Thank you for volunteering. What is your first name? Nick. Can everyone pronounce that?
Nick.
Nick. All right, good. We're good. Okay, check. Nick is our Nickometer. So Nick is going to evaluate the feedback on everything we show you on a scale of 1 to 10. Now, to get started, we need to calibrate our Nickometer. All right? So to do that, what I need you to do is pretend that I just showed you the worst feature ever in the history of Microsoft. This is probably a button that is mislabeled. If you hit it by accident, it deletes all of your project data, shoots an email out to all your coworkers, your boss, telling them how stupid you are. How would you react if we showed you that button? Oh, come on. You just had lunch. Let's wake up a little bit. How would you react if I showed you that button? There we are. Eric, that's not for you. Thanks for coming. Good timing. All right, so Nick, that's a 0 on the Nickometer. Got it? All right. Now, let's pretend I showed you the awesomest feature ever. This is like this really cool feature. You press the button, it manages your project for you. It sends out a status report on Friday at 4:59 p.m., tells everyone how wonderful you are. You can go off, drink margaritas in the bar. It's awesome. How would you react if we showed you that? All right. One more time, just so Nick gets that. Okay, one more time. All right, thank you. So Nick, that's about a 10. So what I need you to do is kind of rank all the audience participation. Great. And I forgot to mention, Nick, you're obligated, then you actually have to sit here through the entire session. Is that going to be an obstacle? No. All right, good, wonderful. So I think we're good. So let's do introductions real quick. My name is Andrew Levinsky, no relation to Monica. I am a vice president with UMT Consulting, where we focus on two things: helping companies figure out what they want to do and helping them figure out if what they're doing actually ties back to it. I'm based in Houston, Texas. Thank you. But as you can tell from my accent, originally I'm a Buckeye. Yeah! All right, thank you. I do have a blog. Some of you, it sounds like, have already found it. And I tweet and email, and feel free to call me if you got questions.
All right, and I am Mike McLean. I'm a senior program manager with the project team, so I work on the engineering team up in Redmond. If you didn't believe me, here's me on a boat out on the water. So it kind of looks like Seattle. But basically, I love working in the enterprise space. I think it really brings a lot of value to customers. And most of the things that we blog show up on the team blog out there. And I'll hand it off to Alan.
Yep. Hello, everyone. My name is Alan Rocha, actually a Brazilian living in Denmark for the last 4 years. I'm a former Microsoft MVP for the last 5 years. Today, a partner of Proje APS, which is a lead company of the PPM platform in the Scandinavia. I also found, and I'm one of the main collaborators of the Mundo EPM blog, which is a blog that I write in English and Portuguese, so feel free to look at. I also wrote 2 books, one of them very interesting because it's a Project 2013, Standard Pro, Professional, and Pro for Office 365. It's like a baby, it took me 9 months to build it, so please take a look. You can buy it in iTunes, everywhere, and that's it. That's me.
Wonderful. Great. Now, we do have an announcement, and I'll tell you, we're going to make more announcements in this session than any other session. That's my promise to you.
Many announcements.
Many announcements. Lots. At least Lots. 2, maybe 3 announcements.
Let's keep them 2.
At least 2. All right. So how many of you were in Mike's session, I think yesterday or the day before, where they talked about the new resource engagement feature in Project? Yeah? How do we feel about resource engagements? Woohoo! Yeah! It's awesome. Great. That's what I like to hear. Now, Alan took that resource engagement concept a little bit too far. So this is actually his first and potentially last Ignite that he is presenting at as an engaged man. Recently got engaged, yes. So congratulations to Alan. Wonderful, Alan. Now I realize that's kind of sad news for, I'm guessing, 15 to 20% of the audience here. It's a tech conference. That Alan's now off the market. But what we're offering to you, just you guys in the room and all of our closest friends here today, you're all invited to the bachelor party tonight at
the
ballroom with Fallout Boy playing his bachelor party. It's going to be great. It's going to be the biggest bachelor party ever. We tried to get that Danish band, you know, the one that we all like, but they were booked. So with Fallout Boy. So, anyways, welcome. Woo-hoo. Congratulations to Alan. Very excited.
# don't tell my wife.
Yes.
Great. All right, so let's jump into the content. So we know that when you're evaluating Project Server on premises, Project Online, and Office 365, you have a lot of decisions that you have to make. And sometimes it can get kind of confusing. What's available on premises? What's available online? So today in the session, we're going to show you how to use Excel to extract data from Project Online. Just be aware that that's also available on premises as well. So we'll try to point out some of the differences. But we also know that customers want a hybrid solution where sometimes they have data that they want to combine from on-premises with their data from online. So we'll talk about that a little bit as well. But just to set the stage a little bit, we know that the industry is experiencing a lot of new business challenges. Our employees, they want to work together from virtually anywhere. So whether they're in the office or they're working remote or they're at a coffee shop, on a plane, or visiting a customer, they want to have access to their data. They want to be able to see their dashboards and their reports and make decisions. They want more flexibility to manage their costs without really large infrastructure costs up front. This means that they don't want to wait 6 months to procure hardware and then have to manage upgrades and patches. They want it to be available instantaneously. And then we know that companies have competing priorities as well. So if your core competency is not in IT and software, sometimes it's hard to manage these upgrades when really you're trying to focus on consulting or construction or manufacturing. And then lastly, we know that our customers, they want more visibility and control over what's happening. So they actually want to have really quick access to their data so they can make quick decisions. So today we're going to walk through some scenarios where our customers can actually get their hands on that data using the tools that they already have available to them. So to start out, we're going to talk about Project and Excel. So a couple years ago, when we first thought about launching Project Online in Office 365, we had a pretty significant challenge. We knew we had Project Server on premises, which had a SQL database on the back end. And when we brought this to Office 365, that meant the database was now living in our data centers in the cloud, if you will. So we kind of scratched our heads and we're like, our database is in the data center. Customers are used to writing SQL queries to get the data out, and they won't really be able to do that based on security reasons, right? We can't just write a query against the entire database with thousands of customers in there. So we scratched our heads and we met with some teams across Microsoft and SQL and just in the industry in general. And all paths kind of led to this new technology called OData. So OData stands for the Open Data Protocol, and this is a new industry standard for building web services that can be used to extract data from online services. So when we shipped Project Online, we actually built a brand new OData service. And the great thing about getting a PPM solution from a company like Microsoft is that we actually sit right next door to the folks in Excel. We work really closely with all the other teams in Office. So when we had this challenge and we said, we have to build this new data service, but we know that everybody loves using Excel for reporting, we actually went over to the Excel team and we said, we need to be able to pull this data into Excel. It's kind of challenging because the data feeds are authenticated, right? You log into Office 365. They're not just open to anyone. So we met with them. We actually built out the authentication methods as well right there in Excel client. So that was pretty exciting. We were able to enable that scenario. But then last year, at Project Conference, we actually announced a new piece of functionality. We took it a step further, and we met with the SQL Server team, and we said, customers love Excel, but they have other data that they need to combine. They like using things like reporting services, and they really want to be able to extract this data and then use reporting services on top of it. So last year, we announced the ability to actually pull authenticated OData into SQL Server integration services as well.
And how many of you are actually using SSRS to report against Project Server? Because I know it sounds like a lot of people are using it.
Yeah, a lot of people.
Fair bit, yeah.
Great. So this was great. It really opened up a lot of options for a lot of our customers. And now you could actually run reporting services, or you could run your own data mart in Azure or on premises and extract your data and pull it right in. So let's talk about the OData feed a little bit more. When you provision a new site in Project Online, you'll have a new OData endpoint available, and you just have to plug in your PWA site, and then at the very end you append _API/project data. So this will get you access to your data service. Now, you probably don't want to pull down all of your data into Excel every time you build a report, right? Well, the great thing about OData is that it does have a syntax that's very similar to SQL. You can filter the data, you can do select statements. So we do recommend that people add a filter condition. We'll show a little bit of this in a minute. But if you append that to your URL, you'll actually retrieve a smaller set of data rather than all the data in your tenant. Then if you take it a step further, you can actually select based on the fields. So instead of retrieving every single column in, let's say, the project's entity, you can just retrieve the project name, the project date, start date, finish date, things like that. So this actually really helps improve the performance of the OData service. But now, our first technical announcement. Here it comes.
Oh, are you running for office?
No, I'm not running for office.
Okay.
Thanks, Andrew. But when we first shipped the OData service, we got a lot of feedback that, when I need to retrieve things like time phase data, which has thousands of rows that are updated in the service, think of people submitting timesheets every day, maybe reconciling by hour, it was pretty slow.
How slow was it?
How slow was it? For 400,000 rows, it might take 2 hours to run a report if Excel didn't time out, okay, if you got lucky. So a lot of our feedback was, hey, we really need to improve performance. One of the great things about us running the service at Microsoft is that we're able to run a lot of analytics on how long the queries take, what type of queries are being generated, any bottlenecks that we're hitting. So what we did was we went back and we said, all right, well, maybe for things like time phase data, we should increase the number of rows that are retrieved. Because when Excel is calling Project Online, we're just giving 200 rows at a time. That's why it's taking so long. We're like, all right, so let's try to increase it. We increased it, went better, better, better. All of a sudden, we increased it to 4,000. It went worse and worse and worse. So we were able to run all these analytics and find kind of the sweet spot. So the announcement is that most recently, we were able to make a change that actually improved the performance on time phase data, where we were able to increase the number of rows retrieved into Excel from 200 to 2,000, which is pretty awesome. And then for non-time phase data, we increased it from 300 to 1,000 based on the type of data you're retrieving. So this was great. We've actually turned on for a number of tenants in Office 365. We're going to slowly be turning on for more tenants. But what this means is that report that took 2 hours now takes 20 minutes. Woohoo! So let's pause for a second and ask Nick. Nick, how does that rate on the Nickometer? Okay. Oh, wow. 7. Okay.
Generous.
All right. You're very, very generous.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. All right. Okay. So, oh, wait. We actually had a quote from our customer that she actually had a report that would have taken 30-plus minutes. Now it takes 7 minutes. And to point out,
just to clarify, so that means that with this improvement, we just actually improve our performance for all reports in more than 10 times. Mm-hmm. That's right?
Mm-hmm. More than 10 times. And these can be scheduled to run if they're in something like Power BI. So they would actually run much quicker, much less load on the service. All right, so now we're actually going to jump into the first set of demos. Let's switch over to 7. Great. And I'm going to show you how to access that OData service for your tenant. So here I have a tenant that's running in Office 365. So if I flip over to this tab, you'll see here my tenant is I love Project Online, because we all do, right?
Twice.
Twice. /_ API / project data. So when I plug this into the URL, here I can actually see all the entities in my OData service. I have project data, assignment data, issues, tasks, risks, or everything that's in my online tenant. So that's great, so I could pull that into Excel, but I'm actually going to pull in a filtered query. And if I flip over to Excel, here, this is the new option I was talking about on the Data tab from other sources, from OData data feed. Here I can just paste this right in. And when I click Next, it's actually going to call up to my Project Online tenant, and it's going to start retrieving this data. See, that was actually pretty quick. If I click Tasks, move to the next, here I'm creating my connection, overwrite what we have. I'm just going to put this in a really simple table just to show you the data that we actually pulled down from Project Online. So just like that, here I have the list of data. You can see it's a smaller number of columns than everything we have in the service. I have the project name, finish date, et cetera, et cetera. So let's pause for a sec. Nick, how does that rate pulling data from Project Online into Excel?
Fast like that.
First, wait, we need the feedback.
Sorry. Jumped ahead.
All right, so feedback. How do we respond to that? We can suck all that data into Excel. All right, Nick.
3.
Okay, cool. All right. He loves performance, right?
Right.
But we've got a long way to go in this
Ramp
session,
up.
so we're going to try to bring that up.
All right.
So now I'm going to hand it off to Alan. He's going to show you how to take this a few steps further.
Yeah. By the way, just to explain, this OData feed that you just created, it's selecting some fields that you can see that I'm only pulling 5 fields or 5 columns, and also making a filter related to one of these fields. So actually, you can, if you are familiar with SQL statements, you can actually use the syntax and make your statements. So what I'm going to do right now is actually, if you are not familiar at all with SQL statements, you don't want to remember any syntax, but you would like to pull the same data and filter to optimize your report and select your columns. So what I'm going to do right now is actually, I'm going to close Excel, don't save this, and I'm going to show you, let me just flip over to 5. Show you this is, who in this room knows what is Power Query? What does mean Power Query? So 20%, including you. So 20%. So Power Query, actually, it's a new technology that Microsoft, it's built in on Office 2016. So you're going to see, actually, I'm going to do exactly what Mike did, but in a much faster and easier way. So what I'm going to do is flip back to my computer, open a brand new Excel workbook. So if you look at, this is the new Office 2016 public preview, and what I'm going to do is actually go to my data tab, the same place that Mike did. But now you can see this new area called new query. So in the new query, I can actually open here, and there are a lot of data sources or connectors that Microsoft provide to you. So actually you can even go to SAP data or Facebook data, your Exchange, Azure. So it's a lot of connectors, and this is growing every day. Microsoft is building new connectors for you as soon as you actually have a demand.
Hold on, Alan. So are you saying
yes,
that I can take my SAP financials and merge it with my Facebook data?
Yes.
Wow, that's incredible.
That's incredible, but actually can be very useful if you are running a campaign and you have a company that you just launched every Friday and you want to merge maybe real data that people are going to your stores with what people are tweeting about or maybe Facebooking about. So it can be useful. So what I'm going to do is actually open my old data feed, take a look at queries, the query that Mike used, so a lot of statements. I don't need this. I can actually just point to my service, and I will just point to my I love Project Online twice service. Look at what it's showing right now. You have an interface that shows all the tables that are available for you, but even better, so you can actually click here and get a preview of this data. So with a lot of, much easier, just few clicks, you have this data. What I'm going to do is actually, I don't want to pull out all these columns, so let's edit this connection. What it's doing right now, it's opening a window, is a Power Query editor, which is built in on Office 2016. And what I'm going to do right now is do exactly the same steps as Mike. So I'm going to select some columns. That means I don't want all this data to pull out on my Excel sheet. I don't want to confuse my users. So what you have to do to select your columns, you just select them. So let me take those two columns and remove other columns. Oh, but Alan, you are just selecting two columns. You made a mistake. Power Query is actually smart enough to actually give you one. You can see all the steps that you have done here. So on my remove other columns step, I can actually open this and say, okay, I need here my percentage completion. I need some finish date, test finish variance, and I need, of course, my major milestone field. By doing this, now you can actually see that I have only the columns that I selected. So what we did was a select statement without knowing anything about code. What I'm going to do right now, it's even more cool. I'm going to filter this without knowing how to filter anything. What I have to do to filter this, I just go to the column I want to filter, I select here, and I say filter when it's not equal to new. So I don't want to get any major milestone that is new. I just want to get files or data that has some information. When I do this, you can see the steps down here that I navigate to my old data feed, I remove some columns, I filtered. If you are a geeky, so this is for the geeky guys, you can even see the code behind. So if you create this in another customer or another data that follow the same schema, you can copy this and paste and use the same logic. So what I'm going to do right now is give a nice name. So let's say Microsoft Ignite Major Milestone. Load into my workbook as a table like my kid, and you have the same information. How this sounds for you guys? This is pretty cool, right? Woohoo! Gets better. Look at this right now.
Should we see how this rates?
Come on.
All right.
We're backing up there.
So I'm running for a 9 right now. So what I'm going to do now is, I have the guys that are not very technical expertise, so they don't know how to use that much of this, so they don't even need to know how to go to Power Query. But I can provide this data in a much easier way, because Power Query actually can connect to Power BI, and you can share queries with your corporate. So what I'm going to do is, I have this beautiful query with the selection of columns that I want, with the filters I have made. What I need to do is just right-click, send this to my data catalog. I can even specify which person or which department or just me and share this. What it's doing right now is authenticating me and sending this data to Power BI. So what I'm going to do right now is I will expect that this guy that I just shared on everyone in my team is working around the world. I will close this file, and I will hand over to my colleague, Andrew.
Thank you. Wonderful. Well, just a minor point of clarification. Alan, how many years have you been an MVP?
Oh, my God. 5?
5 years. Wow.
Yeah.
Pretty impressive that he's been an MVP for 5 years. I've been an MVP for 6 years. So let's just establish that right now.
Not fair.
All right. Thank you. Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
All right. Yeah.
Okay.
Gary's the original MVP. All right. So where are we going with this? All right. So let's do this. I'm going to open up Excel. It's always a good start, we do reporting, we open Excel. And I'll tell you what, I don't want to mess with that OData stuff. I don't get it. That's technical. I'll let the young MVPs deal with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use a data catalog that we created. So I'm going to go ahead and check this out. I've got a data catalog. I can search for a data catalog, so I'm just going to go ahead and grab that one that he just created. So I can go through all the data catalogs. I go through my data catalog that's pulling my Facebook data, my SAP data, merge them together. Not sure why, but I could. And let's see what we got. Wow, we got a couple. This is the one we just created. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to load that as a table. And check that out. I didn't have to do any code. I didn't have to go figure out that pesky OData. What this is going to do is just download a live version of that data from the system. So how does that rate on the Nicometer? Applause, please. Nick? 5. All right, we're going back down.
So I have a small comment. It's just how important it is most of the time when you share this. And people, for example, I just built a very nice report using this data connection, but now I would like to add one more field. By doing like that, you just say, update my data connection, and this field comes automatically for me. So it's very nice, and it's a very easy way to standardize your reports around your company.
So check this out. I can actually take that data, and I'm just going to manipulate it in Excel, make a nice little pivot table. And look, I can count the number of milestones. Okay, that's not really that exciting. Let's try that again. Now what I can do is I'm going to change this, and I want to change this to a date field. And now, let's just kind of change this all up just a little bit. There we are. Look, I've got, here are the key dates for all of the milestones in all of my projects. So how does that rate on the Nicometer? Applause. Not too bad. Nick, still a 5 or so? 4. All right, we got to add some colors. Now, I would point out the dates all look wrong to me. I don't know why.
It's the Danish standard.
By the way, standard, that's right.
All data supports multiple languages. So if you are working with different customers, you can specify a statement in your old data that will follow actually your locate or your region format.
All right, so let's just create a second level to this, and I'm just going to create something very similar. But now what we're going to look at is finish variance. So we're looking at how late those tasks are. And what we're going to do now is add a certain layer of color. So we're just going to create a new rule for conditional formatting. I'm going to take this and count. And so for anything where the finish variance is less than 20 days, we're going to set that as green is our goal. So I'm just setting some rules in Excel. Let me capture that. And we are going to change that to green. Pretty exciting. Will it work? Who knows? It's a good time to ask questions. Questions are good.
Questions? Is the 9?
How would password-protected projects be affected? Would you still be able to access them?
Sorry, can you repeat, please? Or maybe the microphone?
I can repeat it. Yeah, so the question is how are password-protected projects affected? How can you access them through OData? So if your user has access to the OData service and they actually authenticate, they will pull down the data that they have access to. So, for example, if they're a portfolio manager and they're a higher level role and they have access to all the projects in the portfolio, they'll be able to pull it down. What I see a lot of customers do is run the report based on the authentication that they have and then store it somewhere and secure it in a library.
Okay, great question.
Yeah, good question.
All right, so while you were talking, we did this report. So what are we seeing now? We see the dates that we're going to hit all the key milestones, and we've color-coded it red, yellow, green based off of finished variants. This is probably the most fundamental report that most people ask us to do. Any client, any industry, doesn't matter if it's IT, oil and gas, drilling, et cetera. Typically, this is kind of one of the first reports we start with. So that's just creating a very simple major milestone report with one table. What about if we have multiple tables that we're pulling down from OData and we need to combine them, if you will? So what we're going to do now is I'll show you kind of a more complicated example. So let me just go ahead and close that out. Let's not save that. And we're going to open up one where we already created a data connection. And I'm going to go into something called Power Pivot. Power Pivot, also part of Excel. Power Pivot gives you the ability to take multiple data sets and then merge them together. So we're going to open up Power Pivot. We're going to see that I've already got 4 data sets. That's these ones down here. Let's try that again. There we are. I've got my time set. I've got some project data, some forecast data, and some baseline data. And what we can actually do now is we can take those different tables and we can actually build a model. So we've got tables of data, and this has all been blogged up. And I'm just going to merge them together. And let's just merge that. So we want to sort by date. We want to sort by project. And what we've now created is a data model. If I go back into Excel, I can now leverage that. So I'm going to go ahead and create a pivot chart. And I'm actually going to use that data model. So you see I can actually just connect to that data model.
By the way, this is a new functionality or a new interface for Office 2016. So you save, I think, 5 clicks just by this new window. So who has done this will love it.
All right. So let's just go ahead and create a quick report. It's just going to take me a minute or two. So probably now is a great time to ask that question you've been dying to ask.
Yeah.
Eric, yeah. Data refresh. What, you want me to take this one?
You can take it.
Yeah.
Microsoft.
So what's great about the Power BI solution is now you actually can schedule your Excel workbooks to refresh, and the data connections to Project Online will refresh based on your schedule. What's great is they actually have a really nice interface where once you schedule the workbook, you can actually see the history of how often it's refreshed, at what time, and whether it was successful or not.
And if something goes wrong, actually you get an email at that time, and you can actually go there, or maybe open an Excel file and refresh through your Excel file. But the point is, you can go directly, schedule in your Power BI, and you never need to refresh your data again. You just open, and the report is going to be refreshed. Yeah!
Great.
Keep going. Questions good?
Questions? You must use Power BI. For Power Query, you must use Power BI to make this data refresh. But if you use the original data connection that Mike did the sample, you can just publish or just upload it to your SharePoint and it will be refreshed. You must activate the feature.
The question?
Oh, yeah, repeat the question too. Sorry. Just repeat the question.
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, if we just upload this file into the SharePoint, am I going to be able to refresh the data? Yes, you will be able to refresh. If you're using right now Power Query, you must have Power BI to refresh. If you are not using Power Query, you're using the data connection that has been made in the beginning with the statements and using the old data feed, then you must use you can refresh on any SharePoint environment. Okay?
Great. All right. Good timing. Excellent. That was perfect. So as you'll see, we now have a report. While you were talking, I was doing all the work, which is kind of the way it usually works for me. Here, let's get some data. And if we look at this, what this is showing us now is total number of tasks planned versus total number of tasks that are currently estimated. So it's showing me basically an aggregate view of my schedule across all projects, and I can start to see if my forecast is slipping. Again, a very basic report. You don't need financials, you don't need earned value, you don't need resources. We're doing a straight up count of here's how many tasks should have been completed in a given month. Right?
Just a question. So that means you have 4 different data sources or tables, and you built only one chart with all this data?
I did. I actually built one chart, and I married those tables together into one single unit. And you know what happens when you marry multiple tables together is more tables show up, and soon you have 2 more tables or 3 tables, and then, Alan, you will have a minivan to carry all your tables, and then your tables will go to college. All right, so let's just establish that right there. All right.
Sorry for the question.
Yeah. Do I have any tables in college? Not yet. I got a table skating roller derby right now. All right. Great. So I hand it back.
All right. Flip back to the PowerPoint here. Excellent. So just to recap what we saw how to use Excel.
I have a question. Or
is there a question before you move on?
How's backwards compatibility? Like, if you have data sources like Access 2010 or 2013?
Actually, Power Query is supporting a lot of new data sources. So I don't know exactly which version you can have, but Microsoft is working every week. They either launch new functionalities or new data source connectors. And I saw that the new Power BI, now you can even create your own connector. So this is something that is not completely aligned yet, but it's a new feature that IT will actually create a connector for you to go to your SAP in a specific part.
Great. All right, so before we actually move on, let's do a quick test on a Nicometer for Andrew's Power Pivot report combining multiple data sources into one chart. How's that rate? Woo! All right. Awesome. 7. All right. Awesome. Great. Okay. Our goal is to get to 10 by the end of the day. All right. So we saw how to use OData to pull projects online into Excel. We saw how to use a little bit of Power Query. We saw how to build a major milestone report, which is one of the most common reports in the industry. And then we saw how to briefly use Power Pivot to join multiple tables together. All right. So now let's move on and talk about Power BI. So there's a lot of sessions this week about Power BI. Well, why are we shipping Power BI, and why do we have this huge focus on it? Well, our research has indicated that we are projected to see a 10-fold increase in the amount of data in the next 5 years that organizations need to manage. This is coming from roughly 85% of new data types, from new services that are being built, new apps that are being built. And this is really resulting in an explosion of data across the enterprise. So companies are moving from small data to big data now, and there's a very large focus on that. At the same time, from an information worker perspective, we're seeing more of a consumerization of IT. You've probably heard these buzzwords. But this means that our users and our employees are coming to our organization and bringing their own devices. So they're bringing their own phones and their own tablets because they really want to use what they're comfortable with. And this is resulting in about 27% increase of combining data from social media outlets. So Alan mentioned like Facebook and Yelp reviews and location, coordinates, and things like that. So how do we
wait a second. Are you saying that I can take my Yelp reviews, my Facebook data, and my SAP financials and merge them together?
Yeah, who wouldn't want to do that?
Of course. Wow, the power.
Yeah. So when you take all these different aspects, at the same time, our users are really expecting a really great experience across all of their devices. Their expectations are being raised. They want to be able to view their dashboards on their phone, their iPads, and their laptop, and they want it to work seamlessly across all of them. And at the same time, they have data on premises, they have data in the cloud, and they want to be able to combine that and merge that together and create these interesting data mashups. So Microsoft is also realizing, wow, people are not moving to the cloud immediately. It's kind of a gradual progression, and how do we enable that? And at the same time, they want this data to be available across all their different horizontals through messaging, voice, video, including their projects. So when we look at the BI stack, we know that Excel is the #1 reporting tool out there. And I think Andrew wants to tell a little story.
Well, yeah, that's fine. All I say is, typically when we talk about the role of Excel going forward, I'm going to preface this by saying, look, I am not a Microsoft employee. So whatever I say does not really imply this is official Microsoft policy or anything like this. But my impression is that when my kids grow up and get a useless liberal arts degree and can't find a job, so maybe they go join the Peace Corps for a couple years, and then they come back and still can't find a job, so they go into IT because that's what probably they'll do, and then they have to go develop a whole bunch of reports. When that happens, if and when that happens, they're not going to know SSRS. They're not going to know all these other reporting tools. They're going to know one reporting tool, and that is going to be Excel, right? Excel is the reporting platform going forward. That's at least my impression. So I always like to tell that to just kind of illustrate that's the direction, folks. That's where we're going.
That story reminds me a lot about someone I know
who's
very close to me.
Alan,
I'm
probably.
sure their name will come to mind soon.
Yeah.
All right, so we know we have about a billion Office users across the globe. And with Excel being the entry point for reporting, that's where we really focus on discovering data, analyzing it, and creating great visualizations, because that's where you're going to do a lot of the consumption of your data. So when we think about, all right, what are the scenarios that we want to enable in Excel? Well, they're largely focused on those three pillars. Let me back up just one sec. Here. Okay, great. So when we dive in a little bit deeper, we can kind of break it out through these four different segments. When we talk about discovery, we already showed a little bit of that with Power Query. Here, this allows you to discover new data sources, pull these into your workbook, and start working with them. You can share this data across the organization, or these connections across the organization, and it's much easier to build your reports. When we talk about the analyzing of the data, here's where things like Power Pivot can come into play, because here's where you actually create a data model based on these relationships that you're generating. So Andrew demonstrated this earlier. You can actually link this data together in Excel, and then you have some really great modeling capabilities. So then if you move on to the next step, here's where you really want to start visualizing your data. You want to create charts and graphs, and we know that there are more visualizations that our customers want. Excel announced like the tree map this week, which is really exciting, and a few other ones. But here's where you can actually create some nice visualizations using things like Power View. So there are actually quite a number of different add-ins available in Excel that help facilitate these scenarios. Power View helps you generate a more free-form look and feel. So rather than having a report that's in rows and columns and very rigid, you can create something a little more fluent, more similar to SSRS, where you have a free-form layout. You can drag the components around.
And just to kind of illustrate that, what we typically see, and I'm going to try to say this without looking around the room or catching anyone's eye, is that oftentimes with a lot of our clients, it's a generational issue. That there are a certain demographic, and I won't name who really like the same reports and the same structure on their desk at 5 o'clock on a Friday. And then there's another demographic, and again, I won't name who, and I will try not to lock onto anyone's gaze here, who prefers just give me a bunch of data and I'll digest it and crunch it myself. So there's really this spectrum that we see that require project server data, and that's a lot of what Excel does.
And then, and taking into the last scenario is more around exploration. So here's where you can overlay things like geospatial technologies, look at graphs, look at maps based on the coordinates in your workbook. So a lot of these services are coming together in Excel. So why did we focus on Power BI the service? Well, here's where you can introduce more of the collaboration aspect. Here's where you can start sharing some of that information, asking questions, and then providing access to some of these reports and services. So what are the pillars here? Well, here we break it down by these six, and we'll probably focus on the last three in the demos. But basically, PowerBI.com is a new site that's available where you can go and aggregate your dashboards and your charts for your enterprise. So we'll show a lot of that today, how you can pull in your Excel workbook and pull in some visualizations and make it available for your enterprise. Shared queries. So we showed how you could publish up to the data catalog. So this is actually the service aspect of where they're stored. So we would actually use the Power BI service to push those connections up. Power Query is how you access them and pull them into Excel, and then we use Power BI to actually push them up from the service side. Data refresh. This question was asked earlier. So Power BI knows that this is a really, really core scenario, being able to schedule these workbooks, because my executives always want the freshest data when they come in the morning. They want it to be refreshed overnight. They don't have to sit there at the beginning of the meeting. So this was a core scenario that was built into Power BI. Data search. So we know that it's not just about data within your enterprise. You also want to search for data outside. This might be public data that's published from financial entities. This could be other corporations that you're partnering with, including other shared queries.
Or another example, weather data. So for instance, if we do a lot of drilling scheduling, and if I can correlate scheduling with estimates of what the weather is going to be in a specific site or construction, it's actually very useful too.
Yeah, it's a really useful scenario. Mobile access, so you'll see that Power BI actually has built a native iOS app, which is great. So it runs on your phone, it runs on your iPad. They actually announced another app that we'll mention later. And then lastly, natural language query. So we actually work pretty closely with the Bing team. So now that we have all this data in the service, we can start using Bing to overlay some natural language queries, put some more context around the fields and the properties. And this is useful for project data or pretty much any data in the enterprise. All right, so I think that's enough talk. Let's jump into a demo. All right, so here I am on my homepage of Project Web App. So right now I'm just going to walk you through the beginnings of Power BI and how you would use this with Project Online. So the first thing I'll do is access it via app.powerbi.com. And look at that. I'm in there pretty quick, huh?
Yeah, oh my God, I could not even see it. Woo!
Yeah. That's because it authenticated me based on my Office 365 credentials. So here I'm going to create a new dashboard. I click the plus sign. We'll just call this MS Ignite session. And when I hit enter, here I can now click Get Data. So here I have a list of all the different data sources that Power BI supports. So we talked about Access a little bit, Microsoft Dynamics CRM, Salesforce. But here I'm just going to pull in a workbook from my machine that's used for my project data. So here I built a report against my project data similar to how we already showed you. But now I'm going to select Connect. And now we're actually uploading this to the Power BI service.
Just a question then. So can I use my existing reports to pull out data and use them in the new Power BI?
That's exactly what I did.
Oh my God, wow.
Pretty awesome. All right.
I know.
So now I can start typing different queries because my data is in my Excel workbook. I can do, let's say I want to do a count of projects. Look at that. Oh, hold on. Where'd it go? Let's do a count of projects. There we go. Where is it?
Oops.
Hold on. Okay.
The prerequisite is that you can actually type.
All right, yeah. That is the one skill you need.
Required for this to work.
Okay, so I have my count of project names, so that's great. And then I click pin, and if you saw that little toast, that actually lets me pin it to my primary dashboard that I just created. So that's cool. So I have my metric of count of project there. So now let's do sum of total cost. Great. So just like that, I can type sum of total cost. Here I pulled in my cost information. I'm going to pin that. Let's see if I can do another one. Let's do count, maybe something conditional, count of projects on IT. So here I actually have a department field, so I'm actually able to type count of projects in IT. So this little conditional logic, I can pin that to my primary dashboard. And then let me do one more. Let's do sum of total cost on IT. Let's see if that works. Great. So you see how it changed from about 20 million down to 6 million? So here I actually have a summation of my cost field based on my department field. And just like that, I ran the query and I can pin it so I can use it later. All right. So I'm going to stop there for a sec. How does that rate? Great. Nick, how does that sound? 8. All right. Good progress. Okay, now I'm going to hand it off to Alan. He's going to show you how to take a lot of advantage of Power BI.
Okay, so actually I'm going to continue in the same place. So what I'm going to do right now is maybe, instead of only looking at numbers, I want to see show projects, sum of cost, and you can see that's automatically generating a chart for me. So actually sum of benefits, oh my God, and I can see a sum of return of my investment, oh my God, and it's getting better.
Wait, how does that rank on the Nicometer so far?
Woo! Power BI, Power BI.
Good? Pretty good, Nick, what was that? That was a 9, moving up. But bubble charts are a little passe. Bubble charts are really like PMO circa 2009. Can you really blow my mind? Can you give me something like, I don't know, a tree map?
Oh my God.
Can you do that?
It was not planned.
Oh, didn't rehearse this at all.
So what I need to do is actually say as a tree map. Oop.
And we're working on the machine learning that will
and look at
alleviate
that.
the need to type. Yeah, perfect.
That's a tree map.
Woo!
Woo!
I know it took a while to applaud because your minds are blown. How many of you have actually seen a tree map? A couple folks. Tree maps are the next big thing. Bubble charts were really cool like 5 years ago. Everyone's doing bubble charts. It's tree maps.
And you can still using your actually sentences or statements. So on IT, or maybe I can just say show department, and then it's just automatically generating for you. So let's see, maybe a count of projects by risk rating as pi, and you have automatically these charts being generated for you. But it's not done yet, so let's see one more here. So let's see, show country, sum of total cost by department, and as a map. And there we go. That's your map being generated automatically for you without no code, no asking IT, just asking your questions. And think about using your Cortana in the future. When you just ask these questions, go into a meeting, you just show me all projects that are delayed and generating a map for you. And everything we have done here, we are pinned to our dashboard. That means when I go back here, you have your dashboard completely done. And even better, so I like this map a lot, or maybe this one I would like to resize, and I would like to put this a little bit here. So count of my projects, I want to count this all. So portfolio, this is my entire portfolio. This is going to be here. This is only my IT projects. This is my entire cost. And if you go here, I can see the cost for IT. What is even more cool here is you now pin this information here that always, if you get a new project on IT, this will be automatically refreshed every day, and you can see all this information right in your hand.
Woo!
Wow.
Wow. We got a whistle.
It's getting personal now.
What was that? 9.
Well, 9?
All right.
Okay, I'm going to get a 10 now.
Let's see if we can do a 10.
So, not done yet. What I'm going to do is actually, I just built this dashboard using questions, but I can go one level further and actually open my existing report that I have used before. And look at this. I can see and do the same thing. So I like this chart. I would like to pin it to my dashboard. But even better, so I want to see only European projects. So I made a filter, and I want to track this filter. So I pin it as a filter. So I can go back here and navigate through my reports and see different kind of data. And this is the Power View one-to-one fidelity with your Excel file. So you can actually track this information. You can see which project is working where, everything. Even better, you can actually edit your reports and see all this data.
Wait, hold on, Alan.
I have more.
Is this the report I just uploaded? And you
Yes.
can actually interact with this in your dashboard.
Yes.
Amazing.
Okay, one more now. I think now we should jump to our beautiful. So this it's an iPad. I don't know if it's very okay.
Yep.
So what I'm going to do right now actually is just open my Power BI and expect that the Wi-Fi is working. And I will look at this. I have so many dashboards. And the dashboard I just
How many
created,
dashboards do you have?
a lot.
Would you say-
can create so many. It's free.
Would
You go create. But actually, what I want to show is not this.
Right, but would you say you have a plethora of dashboards?
I don't know what this means.
Yes.
But I have a lot.
Sorry. A lot.
Yeah.
All right.
So what I'm going to do now is actually open that dashboard I just created here. And look at this. In 1 second, I have exactly the same dashboard where I can actually open this information, drill down. I can actually go like this and see, okay, this project here, I would like to share and say, what's going on here, Andrew? Why is this like that?
Why
and I
me?
will say like, okay, and I will share by email this, because now I'm going to take a flight when people will work for me.
And did you see he could even Facebook me requests about my project? I really appreciate that now. Awesome.
So all this inside your hands on any device, and you can do the same in your Windows application.
So how does that rank
Yeah,
on
please
the
give me a
Nicometer?
10. Woo! Power BI!
Nick?
Whoa! Yes!
High five.
Got it. Just
All
in
right.
time.
Awesome. Was there a question? Yes, Nick.
Can you set it up to push notifications based on changes in the project?
Is someone paying him to make good questions?
Yeah, so can you set it up to push notifications based on changes in the underlying data? Alan?
Can I take that? Yeah.
Yes, please.
If you have an iPhone app, right now you can actually say, if I reach my budget or if I have more than 10 IT projects, I want to get a notification or an email, and you can do it. So yes, it's your answer. That's very nice.
Great question.
Thank you.
There's a couple questions over there.
Right.
Good question. So I'll repeat the question. So the question is, how many of these features are available on-prem versus online? So Power BI app.powerbi.com is an online service. So to actually be able to upload and create the dashboard that Alan just showed, you'll have to use the online service in Office 365. You log in with your Office 365 credentials, just like we did, and then you can use it. I would say on premises, you have access to pretty much everything in the Excel client: Power Query, Power Pivot, Power Map, Power View. So you can actually use all of those to create your visualizations, combine data, and generate your data sources. You'll need Power BI for a lot of the dashboard creation, the sharing of the data sources,
Now,
things like that.
the one clarification I would throw on that is, as I think you're seeing at this conference, there's, it's a spectrum. So there's on-prem, there's online, and there's this kind of gray area in between. So what you can easily do is actually take that Power BI site and point it at on-premises data. It's just that the BI service itself resides in the cloud. The data does not necessarily have to.
Right.
A couple of more questions over there.
My question would be about portability. I have one instance and another one I test in production.
That's a good question. So the question is, what about portability? There's a test instance, a production instance. How do we move report from one to another? Yeah, it is a scenario that we struggle with because sometimes it is difficult to update the data connections within the workbook itself. We're working to try to make that easier because we want you to be able to migrate it from instance to instance. Is there a tool that helps with that? I don't think there is yet.
I personally haven't done that with Power Query. I know I've done it with other data connections, and being a bit of a nerd, I actually wrote some macros that'll do that for me. It'll change the connections, but I don't know if you do that in Power Query.
One of the nice things of Power Query, as I showed, is actually you have a code area. So in this code area, it's like a text. So each row represents a line of code. So we can actually make conditions. So I just would like to get this data based on a specific field, so you can make this code. So you can copy and paste, just replace a text, run, and it's there. So it's a very smart way to do it. So you can duplicate it. It's very easy, just changing one text information.
Yeah, and it is easier using Power Query than like Power Pivot, for example. Power Pivot, once you start using Power Pivot with your workbook, you actually can't modify the OData connection. But so that's why a lot of people are using Power Query more often when they build it.
Yeah.
So,
One more over there.
Is there any way to do color coding? For example, you get the risk report, so I want to have the high risks in red and the medium risks in yellow.
You mean in the Power BI?
To repeat the question, is there any way to color code it? Because I know, and I've seen this. So I want to create a red, yellow, green report, and some projects are labeled red, which is bad, typically in most cultures, yellow, moderate, and green. And then I throw that into Power BI, and it shifts all the colors up. So red becomes blue, and green becomes purple. At present, I don't think there's a way to control the colors. And this goes to kind of what Power BI is. Power BI is intended to be very simple. It's intended to really kind of do a lot of your dirty work for you. If you would need to go in and start really kind of pinning down colors, then typically I would then go into a more detailed reporting tool like Excel or Excel charts. I don't know if you guys have a better answer to that.
Yeah.
Actually, right now you have some themes that you can use it. If you're using the Excel side, not in Power View, you cannot control colors by yourself. So you cannot say this is going to be ours red. But if you go to the Excel part, that you use normal Office charts, you can actually control these colors. But like Andrew said, it's supposed to be very simple. I don't need to look at this. I can change the theme and just get the data right on my hand.
All right, well, let's run through a couple more slides, I think, and then we'll do some more questions.
Okay, now I'll hand it off to Andrew.
Perfect. So let's just kind of go through. So we demoed Power BI. Awesome. So what do we talk about today? We skimmed a rock over what you can do in terms of reporting. We talked about Excel Online. Used to be called Excel Services, and you always need to be careful about that. We talked about Excel, we talked about OData, we talked about Power BI, and honestly, a lot of these terms are kind of going together, they're merging. There's a lot of other stuff We see our old friend Performance Point out here. People use business connectivity services. SSRS, I think we established that a lot of people in the room are currently using SSRS, which you can still do and online with the SSIS connector. There's a whole number of different options. Mm-hmm. Other sources of information. We've got our blogs, all of our respective blogs. I know we blogged up all of the demos we did today have been on blogs at various points. There are other recorded versions of this presentation actually going back 4 or 5 years now with different demos. So if you look at the one from Project Server 2010, just if you're interested in archaeology, I suppose, you'll see all sorts of interesting demos that didn't make it the cut anymore based on our scientific continual improvement process, number of white papers, et cetera.
Yeah. And I'll point out that I was asked about reporting services a couple of times. Last year at Project Conference, we actually recorded a demo of using SQL Server integration services with OData. So if you're interested in that, feel free to pull that up and take a look at it. It's still available.
There's one more project session, I think, in the conference. That's tonight at 5 o'clock.
Let's see.
There we are. Or maybe two. No. One more session. All right. Two more. Sorry.
One tomorrow. Right.
One more. That's what I said. One more session. However, if you're catching this on the recorded version, there were actually a number of sessions prior to this. So feel free to check the catalog for some other sessions. And I think that's it in terms of evals. Make sure you sign up, et cetera, et cetera. All right, so we've still got some time for questions. Let's open up the floor. Over here on the left.
You ask your questions in English.
Mm-hmm.
You ask the same questions in Portuguese.
So the question is, right now the natural language query is obviously supported in English. What other languages are it supported in? Alan?
The Power BI actually supports more languages. I think it's 140 different languages. But the natural language questions right now, I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's only in Portuguese. Or maybe they launched 4 new languages. Only in English, sorry.
Yeah. Now there's also
only Portuguese.
Okay.
There's also a bit of a training program, so you can actually, as you load your data, there are ways to tell it. Here's a synonym for the data.
Yes.
So I can actually add synonyms for data. We're still waiting for Romanian language support.
Yeah, and actually, I'll say thanks to everyone for coming. If you have to leave, we totally understand. We'll stick around for questions.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead. Oh yeah, actually that's great. Thanks, Krishna. Feel free to step up to the mics.
Just shout it. We'll repeat
At least
it.
you got closer.
Okay, no more questions.
Can you embed conversations in the Power BI so you can track
Oh, like can you have a conversation in Power BI, like about a chart component?
a report? Or
That's a good question. I have not seen that done.
In the current Power BI, this is a preview version. So the preview version is not completely connected to your tenant right now. It's a preview, so it's outside. But the current version, actually, when you upload a file, this is being placed as in a library in SharePoint. So you can actually track this and make all the conversations and share this, and all the feeds will be actually connected to that specific file. Mm-hmm. So I expect that Microsoft will do the same with the preview version. But the current Power BI, you can.
Yeah, and the conversations are stored in Yammer, right?
Yeah, it's Yammer or native news feed.
Right.
okay, that's it. Thank you.
Great.
Nice.
Thank you.
The OData performance improvements we started the session with, are those available, or will they be distributed in CU for those of us strapped by an on-prem solution?
Yeah, good question. Okay, so whenever we deploy improvements to our online service, into Project Online, like these OData enhancements, like even any of the resource management enhancements, what happens is they will be rolled into the next on-premises server build that we ship. So whenever we ship Project Server 2016, you'll get all those on-premises, all those improvements on-premises as well. At Microsoft, we basically use the same code base. We ship the same code base to online that we do on-premises. So anything that we ship to the service just gets cut right into the on-premises build. The way we turn it on online is we'll gradually enable it for tenants across the service. What we did here was we actually tweaked these numbers on just a small number, or a small number of farms, we call them. and measured the statistics, and then we increased the size of the ring. So we gradually rolled it out to like North America and then worldwide. So just in case there is some scenario where, oh wow, somebody had 1 million rows and all of a sudden performance degrades, we can pull it back and tweak it a little bit. So yeah, I would expect it over the next few months. Great.
And that's something, by the way, we're seeing a lot of is people actually using OData for on-premises. I know a couple years, actually 2 years ago, last time we presented this, the understanding was people would mostly use OData for online, and they would still use SQL Server and SQL queries on premises. But we're seeing a shift, and mostly because corporate IT doesn't want to give people access to the database. So OData is a good way of giving limited access without allowing people to mess with the database itself.
And another good point is if in one day you actually migrate to your environment to the project online, all the reports actually work because they will build in OData, so it's going to work in the both services.
Yeah.
Will you still support direct database reporting in 2016?
So to repeat the question, because there's some database changes coming up for Project Server 2016,
Right.
How is reporting going to work on premises?
There are some architectural changes that are happening with SharePoint and Project. For anyone who doesn't know, the project tables are being merged into the SharePoint content database, which is great because then you'll just have one store to manage. We actually implemented something called content database extensions to be able to attach the project tables to the content tables. So there will be views that you could use to report off of that. But yeah, a lot of it also will be based on the SharePoint store. For some reason they come out and they're like, no, we're going to lock everything down. It would be locked down, but more than likely it'll be available. Yeah. All right, and a few questions back there. Okay, the question is, we showed the iOS. Is there an Android or WinPhone app? I'm going to let Alan take this. This might be the last announcement.
I heard about that they are working on the Android app as well. So the Windows app actually was launched yesterday. Actually, I don't know if I can show you right now, but they launched it yesterday. I already installed it, and it's magnific. So I really expect they will launch for Android right now, but there is no at this moment.
Yeah, good question. Oh, one more.
If you any recommendation in order to combine all these dashboards and reports that you've shown with, let's say, the data access rights within Project Online? So, for instance, you might have business unit managers for 5 different areas, and they're supposed to see different data within the dashboards. What would your best practice for this?
I can take that one. Yeah. So basically, when you build your data, you are building this in Power Query. So actually, you can make these filters in the Power Query, make your dashboards, and in the dashboard, at least in the preview, you can share with a specific group of people. So you have actually 2 layers of security here. The first one where you limit it, so I don't want to see any projects that from HR department, so you did this in Power Query. Then you upload, make a report, send to your Power BI. In Power BI, you share only with the department that you really want. And this is like kind of 2 layers of security. So I think the recommendation is make your data secret from the beginning in the Power Query that they will not be able. Because as soon as you are not loading this in your spreadsheet, even if they download the file, they will not be able to do this. I would like to have an automatic one. Power Query, actually, you can send parameters. This is something new, and I have been trying to figure out for many years. But now you can actually send parameters. One way I have done this in an on-prem environment is I can get the user account that is actually accessing my report and send this to a SQL query, for example. And my SQL query get the exact user account, and I can make a filter based on that account. But only working on-prem right now. In an online environment, to be very honest, I have not done anything on that complexity. But I can try to look at it and probably publish in my blog.
Great.
Yep.
I keep on hearing Power BI and Office 365. Do you have to have 365 to use Power BI?
So the question is, do you have to have Office 365 to have Power BI?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
I can take as well.
Okay.
Actually, Power BI runs on the Office 365. What you can do is actually just buy a license for Power BI and Office 365. There is a specific license. So you don't need all the other services that is Yammer or maybe Project Online. You don't need those services. So you're only paying for Power BI and Office 365. And maybe you want to connect it to your on-prem environment. You need at least one Office 365 valid license to use that. So
Yeah,
it's
because when you look at
online
when you look at the data
service.
sources, you can pull data from Dynamics CRM and a bunch of other product lines. So if you're not using like SharePoint and Link and Exchange yet, like Alan said, you can sign up for Power BI, try it with the other data sources, and see how it fits in your organization.
Again, the answer I gave to you, it's based on the current Power BI.
Yeah.
I don't know about the preview, okay? So the preview, maybe they will change this. But the current Power BI, you must have one of
Wait,
these.
stop everything.
I stopped.
Stop.
I stopped.
Mark has a question. Mark, please.
I just wanted to go back to that parameter you were mentioning earlier. You said in the Power BI you have that ability now.
Power Query.
Power Query. Are there any plans that you have those parameters capabilities in our data so that I can only pull down specific project relevant assignment data?
You can do this right now in Power Query. So if you have a Power Query spreadsheet, even though in the 2013 Excel file, you download the add-in for Power Query, you can use any data in your spreadsheet, maybe a cell, and say, okay, now my cell is saying IT projects. Power Query can read this and make a dynamic filter based on that. So actually, right now it's working. So I don't know if you understood your question correctly, but...
If I need to download assignment data on a project, I will need to download all of that assignment data via data in Excel. I don't have a way of parameterizing that right now.
You can with Power Query. And I have actually I have an example that you can do it. So if you want to download an assignment for one resource, I can actually use one of the, I can have an Excel filter, it's a web part filter, that I can get my current user. This I will send to Excel online. My Excel online, it will show this in a cell in my Excel. Power Query will read that Excel based on my user. I will send the parameter to Power Query, and this will be refreshed. The only problem right now is Power Query cannot be refreshed on normal SharePoint at this moment. You must have Power BI. And when you go to Power BI, it's a services refreshing this for you. So it's coming, to be very honest. But if you are just using in normal Excel, it is possible to do it. Actually, there is no limitation. But the services make it a little bit more difficult to combine all these features.
And I'll give you another take. So just to kind of repeat some of the questions. So Mark's asking about whether or not I can kind of automate those parameters so that I can change the filter that's going out to OData on the fly based on the context. Now, one thing that I've seen used that hasn't really been brought up is SharePoint Workflow. How many of you are familiar with SharePoint Workflow? So SharePoint Workflow can actually query OData. So I can actually create a workflow that, let's say I click a button or something in SharePoint, it'll know who I am, it'll create that OData query on the fly, and it will actually go get that data and bring it back. Now, what do I do with that data? I know, maybe I create like a temporary SharePoint list for reporting purposes, or I shoot an email out with a list of information, but I can do all that from a workflow, and I can definitely dynamically create that OData query from that workflow. Great.
All right. If you ask a question, or actually if you just want a project shirt, come on up. And for the 50 of the people who stuck around, we have these pretty cool colored reporting guidelines that our content team sent us. So feel free to grab one of these. This provides an outline of, okay, if there's a feature in Excel, use this when you're in these scenarios. And here's some key considerations. So this kind of goes through Excel down to SQL reporting services and performance points. So feel free to grab one of these on the way out in a project shirt while supplies last.
And if anyone sees Nick, tell him we owe him a prize.
Yes.
Which is not really that exciting. It's traditional Danish candy, if you're into that.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, thank you.